my intent is to get the Spawn, another Spawn movie off the ground that would be a small, real dark, R-rated, supernatural, scary movie.
Got a director for you. I know.
Oh, you do?
Perfect.
Well, unfortunately, the deal I've made in Hollywood is I write, produce, direct it. So that's the.
Oh, there you go.
Hey.
Perfect for you.
Right.
That's
the non-negotiable, because again, they all come in, they all want to buy it, they want to make it a big blockbuster, big movie, and I can't get my head wrapped around that. So I just go, no, I just want to make it a small, dark, gritty, scary, little movie that you can bring out, every 14 months and just keep rolling them out there. But when that gets off the ground, then in 10 seconds I'll put the animation right on top of that. So just like what happened before, then there'll be the movie and the animation sort of feeding off each other.
Who would make the perfect Spawn as an actor? Do you have anyone in mind?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've got an actor waiting for my script, an Academy Award-winning actor who came out to the office, wanted to pitch me his idea of Spawn, and I sort of pushed back and said, "Here's sort of my idea I've been living with. It's a small movie, it's tight, and it's designed in such a way that you don't have to be 22 years old and be super buff and do jumping over buildings and be very athletic. That's not the story. The story is more of a spooky sort of Jacob's Ladder, meets The Ring or something like that. It's a supernatural creep movie, and the only thing supernatural in it is this shadow that moves that we intellectually will know is Spawn, but the rest of the world is normal, right? Which is sort of the movies my kids like and I liked when I was growing up. So it's not there's not guys in spandex and there's not supervillains, and it's the only way I could keep the budget low and that they would allow me to direct it. So the actor I think is perfect for it, but more importantly than that, the idea that I have sort of centers around not so much Spawn himself, he's just a catalyst, but those that are in the movie, they're sort of touched by the shadow. So
like the detectives and like in the books. Yeah. Right.
So I mean the example I use to people and Spawn himself never talks in the movie, which I remember one executive, saying like, how's that possible? You're gonna pitch us a movie called Spawn and it doesn't talk, and he didn't talk. And I go, that's an easy one. I go, because there was this small movie I watched when I was younger. It was, I don't know if you ever saw it. It was called Jaws, and I remember the lead character in that thing, that Jaws guy that was the title character, didn't really speak a hell of a lot, right?
That's right.
He was just a catalyst. So the movie of Jaws was really about the people hunting him, and it was about their relationship and what it meant. When the shadow moved, that in this case the fin moved, how they reacted. Some were zealots, some were a little more moderates and whatever. And so that to me was always more interesting, was, the id of the individual characters. And so the Spawn movie that I've been writing about halfway through is more in that billing. So, when people go, who's going to be your Spawn guy? In a weird way, he's not really as relevant as the sort of the Spawn hunters, if you will, the Sheriff Brodys and the Richard Dreyfuses of the world. Those are the guys that are going to have a bigger part in the actual movie itself.
Well, what went right and what went wrong with the first film?
It was a bunch of us that were first-time filmmakers. So again, we were all doing our best given the limitations that we had. So I can't say that any of us were Academy Award winners. We were trying to do some things with special effects that, the technology wasn't quite there. And then we try to, again, because deadline, you sort of rush a couple of things. And it was weird because it was a little bit before the curve of a lot of the comic book movies busting out, the FF and the X-Men and all the, and then all, there was about half a dozen that all of a sudden got big. Spider-Man came along and just blew everything out of the water. So we were a little bit ahead of the curve, but again, I thought there was a little boy in there and the dog, and I'm like, what do I care about a boy and a dog, right? I mean, I want to see adult stuff. So, which is why I think the HBO, sort of stuck in people's minds a little bit more because we went to a mature version of it. And so the one thing that I will always remember is that after the opening weekend, which was a 20 million opening for Spawn, so it was a big opening, was that the head of New Line Cinema said that their exit polling said that 76% of people were 14 or older. And the moment he said that, I went, wow, so if we ever do a sequel, we can go R-rated, because in 3 years, bam, all those people are going to be able to get into an R movie, which meant I don't want to do an R movie because I want to put a lot of blood and decapitated heads, but it meant that I could then do a sophisticated sort of story, a drama with some supernatural elements into it, and I wouldn't lose the audience because they'd all be old enough to come now.
So Sam and Twitch would be in your new Spawn movie, right?
Yeah, or at least one of them. Yep.
At least one of them?
Right.
Who are some actors that you would love to work with? You don't have to commit to anyone or any roles, but obviously as a movie fan, who would you just?
I've said, again, because there is sort of the Twitch character in my mind's eye in the story I'm writing, and to me it was like, I think DiCaprio would be the guy, right? But my second choice, it may seem like an odd choice, would be Eminem. Because I remember him from Mile 8. He's that broken guy. I mean, I just think that he would just bring a lot to it, and he just has the look, of that guy that just you pick up this character sort of at the bottom of the barrel, and he has to sort of redeem himself as the movie goes through it. So. Again, if somebody would say, Todd, who's your number one, who's your number two? And then after that, I'd probably have to go with somebody sexy so the girls would come.
Right, but Sam's a big fat fuck, so who do you go with for Sam? Like that one me.
Yeah, again, I've had people say you go with, like John Goodman stuff. I think that's a little too obvious.
Well, obvious.
I think you need more of a Gandolfini guy, that is a little bit overweight, but not so much that he becomes a caricature of himself. So
I'm going to turn it over to Lee in a second for a few questions, but I just wanted to say about Sam. My favorite thing about the Sam character, and this is what I love about your animation, is he's fat, he's smoking cigarettes all the time, he has the long coat, and then he has that, you see a little bit of his stomach all the time with the button that just goes above it like a fat guy that the shirt's too small, he can't tuck it all the way in. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I've told people a lot of people try to write them, and I think they get them wrong. They write them as Laurel and Hardy, and that's not who these guys are, right? They're sort of buddies like you two guys. I mean, you have a good time, but the moment a third party walks into a room, and I saw that with Barry Bonds, and I saw it with Gene Simmons, that they act different when it's just the two of us, and as soon as a third person's in a room, bam, they go into this other persona, and that's who Sam and Twitch are. But Twitch is the guy that goes to church and believes in God, but he needs evidence for everything, which seems sort of counter to a guy who then sort of, just throws faith on Sundays, but then he needs, complete evidence, on the other 6 days of the week. And Sam is like the opposite guy. Sam is the guy who then is like, doesn't believe in God, doesn't have any of that, but he completely will go with his gut instincts and doesn't necessarily need the facts that Twitch does, and is willing to basically just go on faith of going, no, that guy just strikes me wrong. And so again, it was always sort of the play on who those two characters were, and then the jokes always came, the fun always came. People weren't paying attention, even some of the writers that wrote them, that it only happened when nobody else was looking, like two brothers that would poke fun at each other, but they would never do it in front of anybody else, in front of the public. They would never poke fun at each other. They only did it when the door was closed. So, it's why I've had a good time with them, and why I think, at least one of them should be in the next upcoming movie.